Most shooters know the 6.5 Creedmoor. It's everywhere. Gun stores, YouTube, competitions, hunting camps. And over the last few years, a lot of shooters have moved even faster, switching to the 6 Creedmoor for speed and flatter trajectories. But sitting quietly between those two cartridges, there's another one that almost nobody talks about, the 25 Creedmoor. On paper, it looks almost perfect. High ballistic coefficient, excellent velocity, very manageable recoil. But if you walk onto most ranges today, you'll almost never see one. So today, I'm putting this cartridge to the test. I've got a fully dialed 25 Creedmoor setup, ballistic charts, scope dials, and steel targets all the way out to 400 yards. And by the end of this video, we're going to answer a question most shooters never even think to ask. Is the 25 Creedmoor secretly one of the most balanced long-range cartridges ever made, or is it just another experiment that never really caught on? Let's find out. The reason this cartridge is interesting is because of where it sits. It's basically right between two very popular cartridges. On one side, you've got the 6 Creedmoor. On the other side, you've got the 6.5 Creedmoor. The 6 Creedmoor is got the 6.5 Creedmoor. The 6 Creedmoor is known for speed, light bullets, very flat trajectory, excellent for competition. The 6.5 Creedmoor is known for efficiency, heavier bullets, excellent ballistic coefficients, and strong long-range performance. The 25 Creedmoor sits right in the middle of that spectrum. The load I'm using today is a 134 grain ELD projectile with a ballistic coefficient around 0.645. That's an extremely respectable BC for a bullet in this weight class. And when you combine that with a velocity around 2,800 feet per second, you get a cartridge that theoretically offers a really interesting balance. Higher velocity than a 6.5. Better ballistic coefficient than many 6mm bullets. On paper, that combination looks incredibly attractive, but ballistic charts on paper don't always match reality. That's why we're here today. Now, before today's shooting session, I actually spent most of yesterday out here practicing with this rifle, and I didn't even film it, which is kind of unusual for me. But this wasn't just casual practice. We were collecting real data, because this rifle is going to be used in competition. And before I left the range yesterday, the groups I was getting gave me a huge boost in confidence. Cold bore shots were landing exactly where they should. 5-shot groups were stacking tightly together. Some of those groups were well under 3/4 of an inch. So going into today's test, confidence is already very high. But today isn't about shooting tiny groups at 100 yards. Today is about something more important. Confirming that the ballistic data, the dial chart, and the real-world impacts all agree with each other. Because when a rifle system is truly dialed in, it should do exactly what you tell it to do every single time. Let's take a quick look at the setup. The rifle is a Bergara HMR Pro chambered in 25 Creedmoor. These rifles use Bergara's premier barreled action, which has developed a very strong reputation for accuracy. The barrel is threaded, and I've got a Banish 30 V2 suppressor mounted up front. That helps reduce recoil and makes it easier to track impacts through the scope. For support, I'm running a Caldwell HLA HDTA C bipod mounted on a long Arca rail. That rail system allows the bipod to slide forward or backward depending on the shooting position. In the rear, I'm using a Caldwell rear bag, and sitting on top of the rifle is probably the best optic I currently own. A Zero Trace Advanced 4-24 power scope. This is a mil reticle optic, which means all of my dialing today will be done in mils. Heavy-duty rings keep everything locked down tight, which is important when you're planning to run a rifle in competition. So that's the system. Stable, accurate, built for precision. Now, It's time to see what the numbers say. The ammunition I'm running today is Hornady 134 grain ELD match. Ballistic coefficient is 0.645. Average velocity through this rifle is about 2,806 feet per second. My height over bore is 2.15 inches. All of that data has been fed into the ballistic calculator. The rifle is zeroed perfectly at 100 yards. From there, the dial chart looks like this. At 200 yards, the drop is about 2.7 inches, which translates to roughly 0.4 miles of elevation. At 300 yards, the dial is exactly 1 mil, and at 400 yards, the chart shows roughly 1.6 to 1.7 mils depending on conditions. Those numbers look great on paper, but again, charts don't hit targets, rifles do. So let's start stretching this thing out. We're starting at 200 yards. I dial 0.4 mils on the turret, get comfortable behind the rifle, settle into the bipod, slow breath, trigger press, impact. Another round, impact again. The recoil is extremely manageable. One of the nice things about cartridges like the 25 Creedmoor is that they allow you to stay in the scope and actually watch your impacts. That's incredibly valuable when you're shooting steel or running competition stages. Everything so far is exactly where the ballistic chart predicted it would be, which is always a good sign. But 200 yards is still relatively close, so let's push it further. For 300 yards, the dial chart calls for exactly 1 mil. This is where things start getting interesting. Because once you pass 300 yards, small errors in ballistic calculations start to show themselves. I settle in behind the rifle again. Dial 1 mil. Break the shot. Impact. Right where it should be. Send another round. Impact again. Stacking shots. The steel target downrange is a 1/3 scale deer silhouette, and the impacts are landing exactly on the center line. When your dial chart and your rifle agree like that, confidence builds quickly. At this point, the system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, but we're not done yet. Now we're stepping out to 400 yards. 400 yards is where things really start to matter. The dial chart shows 1.6 mils. Yesterday during practice, I was seeing impacts between 1.6 and 1.7. So we'll start with 1.6 mils. I break the shot. Impact slightly right. Elevation looks good. Wind hold adjusted slightly left. Second shot. Impact. Right where we want it. Now we're getting somewhere. I send a few more rounds, and 3 of them land within about 3 inches of each other at 400 yards. That's a very respectable group for this distance. At this point, confidence starts climbing quickly, so I start playing around a little, trying to hit smaller sections of the steel, holding different spots, sending rounds higher on the plate, and the rifle just keeps delivering. When you can call your shots at 400 yards and see them land exactly where you expect, that's when you know the system is working. So what makes this cartridge interesting? It really comes down to balance. Think about the typical bullet weights. A 6 Creedmoor usually runs around 105 to 109 grains. A 6.5 Creedmoor usually runs around 140 to 147 grains. The 25 Creedmoor, with a 134 grain bullet, sits right between them. It carries more mass and ballistic efficiency than the 6mm options, but it maintains higher velocity and lighter recoil compared to the 6.5. In theory, that combination should give you flat trajectory, strong ballistic performance, and easier recoil management. And based on today's results, that theory seems to hold up pretty well. Another thing worth mentioning is recoil. The recoil impulse from this rifle is very manageable. Even with a suppressor mounted, the rifle stays extremely stable. That stability makes it easier to track impacts through the scope. And when you're shooting steel targets or running timed competition stages, that matters a lot. Low recoil means faster follow-up shots. It also means you can spot your own misses and make corrections quickly. That's one reason cartridges like the 6 Creedmoor have become so popular. And the 25 Creedmoor seems to offer similar benefits while carrying a slightly heavier projectile. Now here's the real question. If the 25 Creedmoor performs this well, why isn't everyone using it? The answer probably has more to do with industry momentum than performance. The 6.5 Creedmoor became incredibly popular. Manufacturers built rifles around it. Ammo companies produced huge quantities of it, and shooters adopted it everywhere. Once that happens, it's very hard for a new cartridge to break into the mainstream, even if it performs extremely well. The 25 Creedmoor may simply be a victim of timing. After spending time behind this rifle today, the verdict is pretty clear. The 25 Creedmoor is a very capable cartridge. Ballistic efficiency is excellent, recoil is manageable, and accuracy potential is absolutely there. Will it replace the 6.5 Creedmoor? Probably not. But for shooters who want a cartridge that sits right between the speed of a 6mm and the efficiency of a 6.5, the 25 Creedmoor might be one of the most balanced options out there. Now I want to hear your thoughts. Is the 25 Creedmoor underrated, or is there a reason it never went mainstream? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and be honest. If you were building a precision rifle today, would you choose the 25 Creedmoor? Or stick with the 6.5? I'm curious to see where people land on this one. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.